Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. This meeting of the Program and Policy Committee meeting is called to order. It is 5:31 p.m. on this February 22nd, 2023. We're meeting here in the Samuel A. Meyer Boardroom, and we will begin with the roll call. Jackie Levan Ramos, Chair, present. Erica Benavides Garcia, absent. Cindy Liendo,
Present.
Mercurio Martinez Jr.
Present.
We do not have a quorum, but we do have a group of our committee members present. Thank you for being here. Our first item on the agenda is the TASB Board Policy Update 44. Review updated legal policies and act on local policies. Dr. David Arezola. Welcome. It's been a while, right? Seems like forever.
I went back to look at the last time I did this was a year ago, 2020. Hello, everybody. Dr. David, Vice President of Compliance and Risk Management. For the record, members of the board, President Ramirez, we are presenting today just a few local policies that were brought up by TASB Update 44. Just to kind of review what our policy manual looks like. So our policy manual is managed by TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards. And in our policy manual, you'll see 4 types of documents or 4 types of policies, depending on how you want to look at it. So we have legal policy, and those will be updated about once, maybe twice a year. With legal policies, those are taken word for word from administrative code, from the education code. When TASB sends those down, we have no choice but to adopt it. So as soon as they come in from TASB, they're placed into our policy manual. Then we also have local policies, which basically interpret some of the legal policies. And those TASB sent down their recommendation. We review them internally. The board reviews them as well, and they decide whether to adopt them or not. We also have regulations and exhibits, which are almost like attachments to the policy. Very few of those, but we do have a few in our policy manual. So the 3, I know that's probably hard to read, but these are all the legal policies that were updated. They range from and reviewing them, a lot of reorganization of the policy manual, move things from, and they do this quite often. So they move this from this policy to this other policy, and from that policy to this one, and move things around. So that's what, in the legal updates, most of what you see there, at least the more important things were just reorganization of the policy. Right? As far as the local policies, the first one is BBB local. This is something that we worked on internally with TASB to be more in line with what other colleges are doing for their own BBB levels, right? So you'll see what we had before, basically 3 sentences. Now we have fleshed out exactly when our elections are going to be for position 4, 5, and 6. They'll be in 2024 and 2030. For positions 7, 8, and 9, 2026, 2032, 2038. So we're ready for the next 2 decades of elections with this policy.
The idea was, if I may, the recommendation was to be more reflective of our practice.
Right.
And to be more descriptive in our local policy of our practice. And so by the end of 2040, we can then come back and update policy to reflect. Actually, it probably has to happen in 2036 or 2032, which is the more recent one, or the one that'll creep up sooner, so that we can actually be in compliance. Because if we don't, then something's gonna be outdated, right? So ideally, but this should be the most reflective of our actual practice. And that's what Saks is telling us, that's what TASB is telling us. Whatever you say you're going to do, or whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that that's what you're saying that you're going to do. And so in preparation for that.
The other two policies, FLBE local and I believe it's GDA local, they're what we call companion policies. Usually when these two policies, one is for students and one is for the community. Usually it starts with an F, it's a student policy. If it starts with a G, it's usually for the community. And the wording is very similar on both of these. Condenses some of the wording rather than say in all national buildings, laboratories, so rather than write all that out, the policy now says a student shall be prohibited from using, possessing, controlling, manufacturing, transmitting, distributing, selling, or being under the influence of intoxicating beverages on college district property and in college district vehicles and at any college district related activity. And so with prior consent, the president can waive where we can have alcohol when we can, and we do that quite, I'm gonna say quite often, makes it sound like we do it all day. We do that when we need to, here at the board, but both of these policies are the same, but like I said, one is a student policy, that's FOBE. This is the exact same wording, except in the community policy, GDA law, right? This one's easier to read than the other one as well, correct? So the policies that again, they're not new, they're reworded. A lot of the practices, as Dr. Gomez said, are what we're actually doing already. So it's not like we're going to have to change anything from what we're already doing because of the new policy. I think that's it. Just three today.
Yeah, the others were just reorganizational things, the reorganization of the table of contents, of those kinds of things, which we had to do anyway.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Edison.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Muir, Chair recognizes Mr. Muir.
The one thing I would add to the comments about the alcohol policy, if you look at GDA, the prior policy said that, and I remember when the board changed and said alcoholic beverages may be served at college district functions at the specific discretion of the college president with prior notification to the board. The TASB language is asking for that to be changed to prior consent, so then the board would have to consent. And it's really a choice of the board on the college president's recommendation. It's on the one hand, consent would essentially be required. The policy that we have now, the notification is just to the board, the college president saying, this is what we're doing, this is what.
And now they're giving us the option. It could be the board or the president.
Well, I think it's saying that the only way to waive it is with consent of the board.
No.
Or
it says-
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
And can we not keep it with
And
the board?
Can if you choose to,
And
but
notification.
notification, can we continue to say consent meaning is the permission, notification is the advice. Like I'm letting you know we're having an event, and that's the way we usually have run it, where the board is just notified that there's an event coming up, and we don't vote on it, but we're just notified, just kind of like on the trips and stuff. So, I mean, I don't know if the rest of the committee is in agreement with this, but with the consent of the notification of the board, and, you know, the college president brings it to us, so this is.
So we could flip that and say with consent of the president and notification of the board.
Yeah, that's. Yes. Yeah, and I think that's what the board wanted, is the college president to make the decision and then just notify.
But notification.
Yeah.
With consent of the president and notifying the board.
And notification of the board.
And we'll make
At a
that
board
change
meeting,
as both.
at a regular board meeting. Right?
Well, that would be the paper. It's.
Well, no, I could send you a text. If we don't, I think we need to stipulate that. So that it's done in an open meeting.
So let's repeat it again, Ms. Ocanera, it's gonna be with the prior consent of the college president and notification of the board in a board meeting. These provisions may be waived with respect to the specific location on college district property or a specific event that is sponsored by the college district. And it would apply for GDA local and FLBA local.
Good.
And you don't have to say, that's really up to you, that the notification would be in an open board meeting. That, I mean, the college president could send a memo to the board as long as nobody responds to it.
I like the board meeting then.
Okay.
I like the board meeting. I don't know about the rest of y'all. It's better to be safe. And it's already there. I mean, we anticipate having an event, we put it on the board. So, and it stays in policy, so.
And it's on the record.
And so. Okay. Questions from anybody?
I would just have a comment that I just think it needs to be, become well known that anybody booking an event or at the college or wanting to have alcohol at one of their events needs to be told with time so that they know that it has to, they can't just decide to have an event next week and we won't have time to approve the alcohol, you know, if that's something they're gonna want.
Mr. Castillo from, who is in charge of event services is here. Would you like to address that, Mr. Castillo, or do you want me to address it? Because well, we've talked about it before and.
It's just, I've organized a lot of events and a lot of times they're scheduled with very short notice.
Yes, Carmelo Castillo Jr., Associate Vice President for Student Life and Engagement here at Laredo College, Board Members, Madam President. Yes, one of the processes that we're going to be in place, that any type of notification that we receive for events here on our campus must be at least given to us at least a month in advance, so that way we can make the appropriate recommendations and not double book or have the time enough to facilitate and provide the assistance that we need, not only for our campus employees, but also for our agency and community members that would like to visit our facilities.
And in the past, we've had that experience where we've had enough ample time. I don't believe I've ever seen an event where it's from one week to the other, because we pre-plan, especially with the MFA, and if we're having something at the president's house, it usually comes to a notification from the president that they're having an event here. And but in the event that does happen.
Yes, and we currently have our processes for reservation. It's an online form and a calendar. So individuals that would like to reserve facilities on our campus can see the event calendar for that particular facility, and any request that requires that type of I guess service on our campus would also require president approval.
And it's on the form, if they're planning to have alcohol, if they're gonna sell it, or they're gonna give it, I mean, all that's important because of the TABC. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we agree? Right? Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Our next item is consider adopting a board policy applicable to the Laredo College volunteers. I made a copy, and before we even explain the reasons why we brought this item to committee. I found myself wanting to bring a student to volunteer because he was visiting from out of the country and volunteer like at the library, volunteer, coming to help out. He wanted to go to a nonprofit organization and he wanted to come and participate. This was after his graduation from high school. So he was gonna be here for about 6 months and he said, one day I can go and help in the library. And then once I requested, what was the process and did we have a volunteer policy in place, we were kind of sort of like, I remember talking to Ms. Catalan, we're like, we're stuck somewhere. And knowing that, I think if we don't have something in place, we look for options to help us provide that opportunity. Because I see the future as having individuals being able to come and volunteer if they want to. But also there's a lot of projects that we do that it takes maybe more than a week that they would like to volunteer. And Mr. Castillo, I know that maybe you might have some individuals that would like to participate for different events. And this is one way that we can provide some direction for those individuals. And not necessarily is it gonna be like another job that we need to do, but more than anything, it's gonna be a policy in place that's gonna be designed to enable Laredo College to accept volunteers, reduce the volunteer risk, and protect the interests of the college. And so the volunteers in the community is served. One of the things that I noticed is that, let's say the individual were to have come, he did not come, he left already. And he were to come and volunteer in the library. We don't know who, what, when, where, or why they're here. And so knowing that we have a policy in place will help us better understand that. Who are we going to assign? That goes back to, Dr. Ramirez and to the rest of the staff, administrative staff. But I would like to propose this draft. And I would ask the advice of Dr. Ramirez, Dr. Rodriguez, and Ms. Cardenas, Mr. Castillo, and even Dr. Ortiz, right? And even Mr. Chavez and Dr. Arrezola, everybody who comes to the committee meetings, if you have something that you would like to input, that maybe I didn't type it out. Now, I didn't come up with a policy by myself, and I didn't type it out loud. I looked for places that had this in place. However, nowhere in the state of Texas did I find a college that had it in place except universities. Because they utilize different organizations within their scope, right? And so what I did is I put the areas together. I would like for you to have a copy of it. I would like to discuss it today and see if there is something that we can all agree to, committee, and talk about it and see if we're missing anything. There are other pages that can be added to it, such as the application for volunteer, such as who's gonna give the permission, like, to have a volunteer? What if I'm a department like the library and I wanna bring in volunteers? I wanna bring in individuals over 55, senior citizens that would like to volunteer maybe 6 months at a time, right? And they would like to come. And the other thing is, in the future, I'm bringing in another suggestion to the agenda, and we'll talk about it later, but it deals with this one. So it's kind of like a prelude to the next item on the agenda. I don't want to talk about it now because it's not on the agenda, right? But I will share it with you all. So I would like to go over it and see if some of the items benefit us. And if they don't, we can rewrite, we can go over it. But I did include the purpose. I included the definition of a college volunteer. Someone who is uncompensated and whose services are offered freely and without pressure or coercion to support the humanitarian, charitable, civic, or public service activities of the college, and that they are unpaid. I also included the policy, which the policy includes that anybody who comes to volunteer at the college has to abide by the policy, procedures, and external laws and regulations that govern their actions. They could be included relating to the ethical behavior, the safety, the confidentiality, the protected health of student information, computer use, financial responsibility, and the drug use as well. Talking about FLBA and GDA, it goes hand in hand. And it's also that they're not covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act, where we don't pay them. They're individuals that are gonna be volunteering. One of the examples that we could utilize volunteers is in the area of the environmental science center. Individuals come in from schools, they could come in from municipal court, they could come from different areas, but this will solidify what they need to do before they come and be present in our campus. Okay, the process and the procedures when selecting and engaging a college volunteer. This is the area where we need the most assistance from administration and from ourselves. I put down some information, but it's clearing and removing and things like that. So like one of the things that I put down is that a division head, the president and vice president provost shall approve persons to serve the volunteers of the college. That's open for modification. Because who would be the person, or would we actually put the procedure in here, okay? If someone is wishing to engage a volunteer, they must complete a description of the duties and services to be performed, as well as the start and end date of the volunteer agreement form. The volunteer must complete the remaining portions of the volunteer agreement, and these forms should be forwarded to Human Resources for review. So going back to Human Resources, would we utilize Human Resources or would we utilize the department where Mr. Castillo is at? Again, do the procedures follow in line with the policy, right? 3 and 4 or 5 also talks about Human Resources and what they would do, conducting the criminal background checks, and also maybe specific training. Again, these are all suggestive procedures that could be implemented in the policy. If on the second page, if the individual is a returning volunteer, but the break in their service is greater than 1 year, all applicable forms and process must be completed again. A college volunteer may serve no longer than 1 year without renewal. Who is eligible? It has to be a person who has the adequate experience, the qualifications and the training for the tasks he or she will perform as a college volunteer. And to serve as a volunteer, an individual must be willing to provide services according to this policy and complete and sign a Laredo College volunteer agreement and other associated forms as appropriate. Now, very important, the next item is a current employee may not become a college volunteer at the college in any capacity in which he or she is employed at the college, or which is essentially similar to or related to the individual's regular work at the college. A current employee may volunteer for special events, programs, or in any capacity that differs from his or her employment outside their working hours. So if I were to say, well, I'm gonna volunteer, then that could run it, again, that could be another procedure that could be placed in the procedural manual. Exemptions, college volunteers may not replace employee positions or impair the employment of a college position. An individual under the age of 18 must obtain parental consent to volunteer. And here's why I put that there. We have a lot of dual students that are taking courses. They are students, so they can come and volunteer. They don't have to fill out a volunteer agreement form, right? But if they're under the age of 18 and they're here to help in a summer camp, it would be nice to make sure to see who they are.
Or with the environmental center, or,
Yes.
I mean, because that, I can see that.
Working with young children, especially with minors, I think it's really important to make sure that we have that parental consent. Because then somebody comes up and says, oh, they fell in the pit with the alligators. Well, you signed the waiver, you know, I mean, unfortunately, right? But I mean, it sounds like, why would that happen? But still, you gotta protect yourself. And individuals under the age of 15 may not become college volunteers. Anybody under 15 could be, you know, chiquillos, niñitos, they're the ones that we are protecting when they come to the environmental science center. Now, there is an item that I did not put in there, and that is in the event that we do not cover, for example, the museum that's coming up. They would have to take care of their own, right? But they cannot come over here and be volunteering in this area if they're already registered there, that's where they have to stay. So that might be an item that we might have to put. Prohibited activities. College volunteers are prohibited from performing the following activities. Operating a college-owned or leased vehicle, believe it or not. When we have volunteers in different organizations, sometimes they utilize the vehicles of the organization and they have no business utilizing that, right? Operating heavy equipment, activity considered inappropriate for the employee, working with infectious or potentially infectious agents, including human blood, working with hazardous materials, environments, or related areas which may otherwise place a volunteer at risk for physical harm. And for volunteers under the age of 18, engaging in any activity that would violate the child labor restrictions of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Some of us would think that's not going on. Just yesterday, they're hiring 12-year-olds to work at a meatpacking company. In this day and age, why can't we have it based on a policy? So that's what came to my mind when I was writing it out. Services requiring a volunteer agreement are volunteer activities with students and or subjects of experiments, activities with minors such as special camps, a person volunteering for an extended period of time, 1 week or greater, long-term or ongoing volunteer services such as mentoring, recreational and competitive sports, and services requiring access to confidential information. To perform any of the voluntary activities listed above, a volunteer agreement form and a background check must be completed. Specific one-time activities which may be considered low risk, such as the Fun Fest, would not require a volunteer agreement or background check, and to ensure consistency in application, please contact Human Resources before allowing a person to begin volunteering in the department. And then finally, the dismissal of a college volunteer's term of service may end at any time without prior notice. Is this policy that I submitted set in stone? By no means. I would like feedback from everybody if possible, and I would not feel bad because I did my research, but I can always accept advice.
So the policy, I'm trying to decipher this, the policy that the board would set would be requiring us to have a volunteer procedure. All of these things that you've listed are procedures, not policy, right? So I think we'd have to, so we'll regroup a team and we'll cut out what's not policy. We'll come up with the
policy itself.
that would require us to have something in procedure.
Right.
And we'll pull out all the detailed work, because it is a lot of detailed work.
Yeah.
And we'll put that into what we're calling our standard administrative procedures. And then make that part of our local processes internally.
Yes.
So we'll, by next month, we'll come back to you with something, before committee so that you all can review it. And then we can talk about it again at committee, and then maybe we can come up with an actual policy for the next board meeting.
Yeah.
And then we can give you an outline of what procedures we're going to follow, and then put that in the books.
There were,
Okay.
the only other colleges that had them were outside of Texas.
Well, most of because this is a very localized way of doing things, it wouldn't necessarily be the procedure would be what we do internally to accept help from the outside world, or non-enrolled students and non-employed, non-employees. But the actual requirement from the board to us would be to have something in place. So we'll work on that, and we'll get Rusty to help us, and we'll, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
So we'll get something to you all for next month and see, and then we'll internally work with, because it will be different for what we do out of student life than what we do out of HR. Right, so I do think that background checks are gonna be necessary, especially in today's world. I also think that requiring every volunteer to do the sexual harassment is not an option. So some of these things become roadblocks for people. They don't wanna do them because it takes time and they're gonna come in and volunteer. So typically, you'll have, if somebody's gonna volunteer for less than 36 hours, then there is a waiving of requiring the sexual harassment training. But that's something that we need to discuss internally. Maybe we don't want to waive it for anybody. We require it of all employees, and so, and that, there's nothing to preclude our employees from volunteering. Actually, we encourage to build campus community. We want to encourage our employees to volunteer and support and help and build that camaraderie internally. And so I think that's something we need to grow inside out. So we'll come back to you with some definitive language.
I wanted to begin the conversation and not speed it up and rush it. Because I did, and I didn't want to make sure that I brought it to the table. And then you all decide what's gonna best benefit the group. Are we gonna cut everything out of it? You feel that we do need to rewrite it again, you know what I mean? But we want to focus on policy. I just added the other parts so that we could, again, start thinking about what are some of the things, the reasons why, and what are some of the other options we have. And again, I do agree with Dr. Ramirez about the processes. We've always followed that processes on one side, policy on the other side. And so, but I did feel like maybe this was an opportunity for us to start having that conversation. If it's not ready for next month, okay, you know, but we start talking about it, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity to bring it to the table, and I did want to share with my colleagues, my committee members, to share that that will not be brought to tomorrow. It will be moved for a later time. So, okay,
Thank you.
questions?
No, I think it's a great item. I think it's very important. We need to make sure that everybody who's on campus has been checked thoroughly, especially if they're dealing with children or even with the rest of our staff and students. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Judge, maybe? We're okay? Okay.
Fine.
Number 5, Texas Governor's Order regarding the use of social media software and Laredo College draft policy. Dr. Benita Ramirez and Mr. Albert Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as Mr. Chavez makes his way to the podium, you have a copy of the letter that we received from the governor. I don't know if everybody got it. I wanted to make sure it should be part of your agenda. No? Yes?
Here.
And so, just so that you're all aware, and I asked Mr. Chavez to be here so that you know what it is that we're doing, in case you all get questions about what we did and why we did it, and we did it to their credit. Everything was done rather swiftly. Mr. Vela and Mr. Chavez worked on this very quickly with legal, and we were able to get something taken care of very quickly, because we did have to submit to the governor's office our plan of what we were going to do. So, Mr. Thomas?
Good evening, Chair, members of the Program and Policy Committee. My name is Albert Chavez. I'm the Associate Vice President for Information Technology. And like Dr. Ramirez mentioned, today this item is more informational to bring you up to speed on this particular topic. I'm sure you've heard about it in the headlines. It's all over the state of Texas. So it's a very short presentation, 2 slides. I just wanted to bring you up to speed as to what has happened. On December the 7th of 2022, Governor Abbott sent out orders to state agencies to block the use of TikTok on state-owned network. Then as a follow-up on February the 6th, the governor announced a statewide model security plan for taking action against TikTok and other software and hardware that has been banned throughout the state of Texas. And then last, like Dr. Ramirez mentioned, right after that announcement of February 6th, we all got notice that by February 15th, state agencies had to implement their own policy to enforce the statewide plan. Now, the big question that I attended several meetings with the Texas Department of Information Resources, colleges, where do we fall on this? So technically, we're not a state agency, but the state did require that colleges also enforce the same policy. So we took action and submitted a draft standard administrative procedure to them. So basically, the SAP or standard administrative procedure was drafted, was reviewed by the executive team, and we submitted it to the Department of Information Resources before the deadline. And our next steps are the Department of Information Resources and DPS are going to be reviewing all the policies or standard administrative procedures that have been submitted by all the agencies. And they're going to respond back to us whether it complies or not, or if we need to make any adjustments. As of today, because of the TikTok is one of those that it's been very clear that they want for us to block access. It's already been blocked on our campus network. I can give you an example. The state of Texas has developed a website and it lists as other software services that they want agencies to block. For example, there is a very well-known tool. It's an antivirus tool from a company called Kaspersky. It's been out there for a while. That's a common tool that some agencies use, and it's on the block list. There's another program that people use commonly called WeChat that's also on the block list. And then on the hardware side, which is one of the more difficult areas, and then we also need to address here locally as part of our steps, is there are hardware manufacturers of tablets and so forth, like the brand Howie, that we are looking through our facilities because we do own some of those devices. So we need to take some action and either replace them or the framework that the state developed does have an option for the agency head case, in this case, Dr. Ramirez, to allow us to make an exception. But we're going to review that information presented to the executive team and then take action from there. Oops, I got ahead. So basically, review of existing software and hardware. So basically, when we're working with the department, we're going to be looking at everything very closely, making sure that we're not purchasing any hardware or software that goes against these requirements. And then also work very closely with the procurement department to make sure that we're in compliance with this requirement. And I think at this point, we're just waiting for our approval from the state so we can put out that standard administrative procedure. And then from there, as I mentioned earlier, TikTok has already been blocked on our network. We will continue working on the other items. The only item on the hardware that I do know for a fact we have here is some tablets from the brand Howie that are used in the automotive technology that we'll need to take some action on.
And so what we wanted to do, we don't need a board policy on this. We just wanted to make you aware. And so we, just so that you know that we are, as of now, in compliance with what's been required of the college. And we just wanted to share the information and the steps that we took to be in compliance with the governor's request.
Good point.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I know that they're submitting to see if this is okay, so would this be something that we could consider putting into our policy manual? Or would it be a?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could talk about it. I would wait to see. Yeah, it's more of a procedure. It's something that the college president can implement. And this is, I don't know if you want to call it an interim policy, but I suppose we need to wait for feedback from the state of Texas, and they may approve it and no changes are required or changes may need to be tweaked.
So with.
But I think it's a board policy.
It is a
It's
procedure.
a procedure, yeah.
They refer, well, remember that the state refers everything to a policy. So, and by policy, they really mean procedures. So, so the clarification on that is it's a language issue, right? So we don't need to have policy. We did check while we were in Austin and we did have a TAC meeting on this. TAC did follow up with DIR. We do not need board approval. We do not need board policy. What we needed to do is make sure we got in compliance, and the compliance was, what are you doing about this? And how quickly can you do it? And so, and we did. So thank you, Mr. Chavez, for doing that on short notice.
No problem. If I could add just one last thing, we were discussing this earlier. I mean, probably the next couple of months, Dr. Arresola is going to be presenting an update from TASB on the information security policies. Because TASB always includes what the state requires on there. So I'm pretty sure in the next couple of, probably maybe the next or the follow-up meeting, you'll see a change or a requirement on the manual policy from TASB with that verbiage already on.
And I think the statement may be something as general, or is this what they said, as in compliance with all state and federal requirements. So, and that covers everything, and I think we have that somewhere in our local stuff, so that we have to be in compliance with state and federal guidelines, so. So I think we're okay, but we'll see what they come back with.
So tomorrow's item will just be notification.
It's an information item only.
And just to recap, number 4 will not, I will move to leave it to another board meeting. And then number 3 will be placed, is already in the agenda, and that's going to just be for adoption. And for the notification, you will be here tomorrow, right? So that in case.
Yes,
you have
ma'am.
any questions.
I'll be here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We don't know how long that's gonna take, Madam Chair, at all. We don't know how long DIR and DPS is gonna take.
But
They,
we follow the process.
every state agency, every college and university had to submit by the 15th. So, right, and there was a weekend in between, so everybody was scrambling at the So,
The good thing is we got the information submitted.
yes,
That's what they were requesting.
and that's what we wanted you to know.
Yes.
We're in compliance.
And on our meeting yesterday with the IR, they did inform us that DPS had hired some additional contractors to help them review the documentation. So they're working as fast as they can to expedite. I forget the statistic, but there's a lot of agencies in the state of Texas, so they have a lot of documents to go to review. So they did hire some additional consultants to help them go through the process.
We actually got a request today for, they're looking for 4 technology certified, what was it, Veronica? Technology certified technicians that are certified to work for them. So,
That's good. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And that brings me to number 6, and it is 6:15. And this committee meeting of the Program and Policy Committee is adjourned. We're finished. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Simple, to the point.